Hey friends, this is Joseph Maynard. So what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about morality, specifically with regard to spirituality. And I don't care what kind of spirituality you have. You could be a Christian, you could be a Muslim, you could be a Neo-Advaitin, you could be a Advaita Vedantin, you could be a Buddhist, right? You could be a nothingnist, you could be a nihilist, you could be, I don't even know what spirituality is, right? So morality is a very fascinating thing because it's contextualized in different ways among different people. And this is something that you just have to come to learn to expect. And what I want to do in this video is I want to explain exactly why absolute love is a higher attainment than absolute truth. Okay, these are words that I've talked about before, but I'm going to explain them in more detail here just to bring everybody up to speed. And why absolute love, in a way, it requires consent, and it also requires a contract, right? And so, like, if you guys have ever heard of like the moral contract or the social contract, even in political philosophy, like Rousseau or maybe Hobbes, if you know anything about Western philosophy. But basically, all of these pieces have to be kind of understood, even in a power perspective, to really grok how morality functions and how you might think about morality, or how I think about it, and then, how you might decide how you think about it. Because, see, from my perspective, I don't assume that everybody should think like me, or everybody should feel like me, or everybody should be like me. I realize I'm showing up as a finite perspective in the world, and so is everybody else. So, I don't assume that everybody should be like me. This makes me very different from most people. Most people assume I'm right, you're wrong, right? You need to be like me, or I don't want to have anything to do with you. Now, the problem with that is that shows a need to control, right? A need that other people need to be like you in order for you to be happy in a community. Well, that shows two problems from my perspective. And, I'm open to you disagreeing with me here. Think about it yourself. One is, if you were really certain in your spirituality, you wouldn't need to tell anybody else that they're wrong. Think about that. If you were really certain in your spirituality, you wouldn't need to tell anybody else that they're wrong. Two, if you've integrated love, you would be able to disarm people by your presence alone. And the thing is that people have disagreed with me on this. And they've said, well, and I agree with this too. It's like I'm giving kind of two aspects to morality here. One aspect of morality is you can disarm people by treating them like a human being. This is something that I've basically put into practice for like the last, I don't know how many years. But I'll give you a good example here. Just give you a few examples of this. Somebody who's clearly out of control. I live in San Francisco, so, we're all very close together here. And I don't have a car, but we walk around and, we have homeless people here. We have rich people here. We have ordinary people here. We have artists here. We have workers here. We have every kind of person, right, you can imagine we have here. And they're all out on the street. So one of the things that I've learned how to do is I've learned how to talk to everybody and anybody. Old ladies, clerks, you name it, right? Part of my job, actually, is to communicate with everybody, but it's face to face. I've done some stuff online too, but mostly what I do is face to face, in person, because I'm living around all of these people all of the time. And so, but one of the things that I've learned is that the key aspect of morality is treat everybody like they're valuable, right? And listen to them. And you will watch their defenses go down, right? Now, this is half of it. The other half of morality is defensive, right? You don't want to be walking around blind without a cane necessarily, right? It's like kind of the stage green mentality, like, oh yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to hang out with all these stage red people and just be kind to them and they're going to respect me and take care of me. No, that's not the way it works at all, right? Don't ever assume that, right? So morality, it seems to have two prongs to it. The first prong is an anti-defensive mentality taken toward a person who's different from you, right? And you're listening to them like a human being. They may disagree with you. You're listening to them like a human being. You're kind of open to them, right? Like you're like, and you will watch their defenses go way down. Because a lot of the reason why people have defenses is because they feel misplaced or they feel misunderstood or something along those kinds of lines. This is harder to do online, and I wouldn't recommend doing this online. It's just really difficult to do. You got to do this in person. But this is exactly what makes a spiritual guru attractive, is because they have the mentality like, you're welcome here. I'm not going to judge you, right? I want you to relate in a higher way, right, than the way that you're relating currently. Because a lot of the reason why people are tense and reactive is because they have some kind of a problem in their life. It could be mental illness, it could be lack of money, lack of health, lack of relationships. There could be any number of reasons why somebody is acting in a way that is socially tense, right? And what I've found, just as a general principle of morality, is one of the things that I do very well, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I'm just saying, and you know, a lot of people kind of have like, they don't see this, right? So somehow they don't see this as important. But at least in person, I'm a very disarming personality, right? Like I can talk to anybody. I can go up to a thug or a kid or a baby or even animals too, like cats, dogs, right? I mean, this sounds a little ridiculous, but I'm just saying that like not only that, but like perspectives that are hostile already, right? That are not going to not become defensive. Like, you guys ever see that movie Dances with Wolves, right? This is a good movie here. Like, don't ever think that one of the things that you might mistake here is thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna win everybody over. Well, the movie Dances with Wolves is a good movie because it shows that like you can't win every being over, right? So this is the other aspect, the third quality for morality. So let's enumerate these. The first quality is to initially have a listening first kind of disarming mentality toward reality, right? And this we're going to talk about this in the second part of this video. The second aspect is keep your defenses up, right? Because just because you're open doesn't necessarily mean that other people are going to treat you well. And then the third aspect is realize that there are going to be some persons or systems that are never going to open up to you and never want to relate with you at all. Then how do you deal with those people? Right? Well, I would argue that you leave them alone. See? So one of the most loving things that you can do is to leave someone alone who doesn't want you around. So this really gets into kind of deep issues of relation and deep issues of morality and ethics more generally. So my point of view, just to kind of summarize this, is one, try to be a friend of everyone if you can. That doesn't mean you like walk up to everybody and say, hey, I want to be your friend. It's like if you happen to interface with somebody, try to bring out the best out of that person that is possible using humor, relation. Like one of the things that I do is, I let the person know, like I have an energy, I have like a vibe in my approach to where the person knows right away that I'm not a threat, right? And they know that I want to listen and that I'm coming at them at a peer level. I'm not coming at them below, I'm not coming at them above, I'm coming at them at a peer level. And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, I've had some exceptions here, but 9 times out of 10, it's reciprocated, no matter who the person is. And so that's number one. I think number 2, though, is healthy boundaries. But I think the thing with boundaries, just like openness, so it's like openness is number 1, boundaries is number 2. Both of these can be way too open or way too closed. So for example, if your social boundaries are way too high, you're going to be like living in fear, basically. Oh, somebody's out to get me. I got to worry about my neighbors. I got to worry about my family. I got to worry about everybody, right? That's no way to live. That comes from you. You're promulgating that fear, and other people can feel that. For some reason, you have that fear, that social fear. I don't know where that comes from. It might just be the way you are, right? Some people are more open and relaxed, and some people are more fearful and kind of tense socially. But I will say this, that not only do humans feel tension, but animals feel it too. You ever notice that? Like some dogs can pick this up, actually. Somebody might be really tense and a dog will pick that up and like start barking at that person. You're like, why is this dog barking at this particular person? Well, it's because it can sense that like social tension or social sort of like defensiveness, and it's picking it up because dogs are actually very emotional animals. Whereas a dog can come up to me most of the time, not always, and just be very relaxed and very friendly because I don't give off that kind of a vibe. So ethics, in a way, maybe this is kind of what this video is about, is that ethics does have something to do with vibe and energy, the energy you give off. Do you give off an inclusive, relaxed, accepting energy? Or do you give off like a judging, closed off, you got to be scared of everybody, you got to worry about everything? Is that the kind of energy you're giving off? Right? So morality is about social relation, and it really is about having these in the right kind of balance at the right time. That's what wisdom is. Because you don't want to be so open that you're taken advantage of, and you don't want to be so closed that you're creating conflict where there doesn't need to be conflict, right? Okay, friends, so we're halfway through the video. Just give me 1 second. I'll come back and we'll do part 2. All right, friends, welcome back. So I got some notes here. I'm not going to cover all of them. That's what I do. I make a bunch of notes, but then what I do is I realize, okay, first of all, notice how no one seems to have an adequate account of judgment. Why is that? Because only you can really be the judge intuitively, right? So, I make all these notes, and then as a creator with an intention to create, I have to make a decision with my audience in mind, like who's watching my videos. I know who's watching my videos, but I'm just saying, like, and also I don't know who could be watching my videos too. On the other hand, I have a good idea of who's watching my videos, but I don't always know entirely who's watching my videos, and that's okay. So I have to measure what I do. I have to create for those who are watching my video. And one of the things that I will say is that no one seems to have an adequate account of judgment. Okay? You're the judge. And there's a relation between wisdom and judgment too. The older you get, the more you're like, you have better judgment the older you get, generally. This isn't always the case though. So for example, if you say, I don't like Brussels sprouts when you're 5 years old, that's very true. You don't need more wisdom to know that in the moment you don't like this or you don't like that. So sometimes judgment is actually very clear. But sometimes judgment does require wisdom, especially when you're dealing with people. Judgment requires a lot more wisdom. Paranoia impedes relation. Humor opens up relation, but it can also seem as a bypass too. Like, humor where people aren't getting along can seem shallow. You notice that? So humor doesn't cover up for deeper issues in a relationship. Humor can do a lot. Conscious creation can do a lot, but if you're in a relationship with somebody where you don't have a meeting of the minds, it's like humor is not going to be enough of a salve, right, to hold that relation together. And also, here's another thing too. And I've said this before, absolute love doesn't mean that you need to be in a relationship with everything. Not at all. Because you're still showing up as a finite perspective in the world that has tastes, preferences, and that's great. See, but people don't always see it that way. People want to gloss the relative. And they want to say, well, everybody has to be like me, not seeing that they're really just, right, wanting everybody to be like their own preferences. Because they assume that they don't have any preferences, right? That they're totally unconditioned, they have no ego, right? They lack the ability to see, no, every person is judging from, on some level, a finite perspective. And that ego is never going to go away. That ego is part of the absolute, is the finite, see? Don't try to, again, don't try to relate with people who don't want to relate with you. As soon as you realize that somebody doesn't want to relate with you, they see you as ugly. They tell you that you're ugly even. They challenge you, right? I mean, there's only so much that is going to be tolerated because of the fact that you're a finite perspective. So absolute love doesn't necessarily mean that you tolerate everything. That's a myth. People who say that, right, they're trying to kind of grandstand their own perspective. Like, oh, I'm so tolerant, right? I can accept anything that happens to me. No, I've seen these people in action, right? These kind of spiritual enlightened people who say this, they don't act this way in real life, right? They get their undies in a twist just like everybody else does, and they exercise the power that they have to be able to basically keep a peace of mind, right, with their own finite perspective or their own ego, just like everybody else does. Now, you can develop yourself to have more tolerance, but this requires work. This is basically what development work is, spiritual enlightenment work is you can work on truth, which is basically having a pillar that allows you to move into love, into beauty, and ultimately into wisdom, because you're spiritually grounded. So you're not threatened by other people's spirituality. But then also you realize you're a finite perspective too, so you can open up to the realization that disagreement is the norm, right? Because everybody's showing up as a finite perspective, so disagreement is the norm. So in order to have absolute love on some level, right, you have to realize that disagreement is the norm. And what you're trying to find is you're trying to find a relation that makes that better for finite perspectives. So it's not about dropping your beliefs. It's not about not arguing. It's not about dropping your selfishness. It's not about surrendering. It's not about dropping the human. It's not about no reacting. It's not about no morality. It's not about finding a hidden empirical epistemology. It's not about trying to escape the relative. It's not about seeing the ego as unreal. It's not about trying to become egoless. It's not about trying to bring morality through the back door. It's not about being man on the cross. It's not about like a purity mentality and advocacy. It's not about thinking of yourself as being just a witness watching yourself. You realize that, have you noticed that like someone may not even want to listen to you? You may be giving what you think is a great and constructive insight on a situation or relation, and someone may not even listen. Or even if they do, they never register or agree with you about it. And the issue comes up over and over and over again. You're made to feel silly for even bringing it up. So this is what you have to notice. Understand it structurally and systemically so it doesn't become too personal. Now that's all you can do. But notice this too, that when I say so that it doesn't become too personal, sometimes it will become personal too. You just don't want to do it, right? You're like, look, man, we have very different points of view. So you're almost better off relating with people who have very different points of view with you. You're almost better off relating with them at a distance, right? It's not that I want to say that you're wrong per se. It's that you and I clash for some reason. And so we shouldn't be relating closely, right? There should be a distance. So I guess what the point of this video is, I'm kind of finding out, is like, the thing about absolute love is it presupposes this close versus distant relation that's not really talked about. Right? There are people who say, oh yeah, I'm so spiritual, I can get along with everybody. Bullshit, right? Bullshit. You're not going to get along with somebody who wants to rob you, who wants to hurt you or your family. Nor should you. On the other hand, you don't want to be so defensive that you're like the paranoid little old man who's just like, living in a kind of a compound with razor wire, around your house because you're so afraid that somebody's going to hurt you or that somebody's going to hurt your family, right? But it goes to this kind of close versus distant relation. But that requires judgment and wisdom to get that right. And so, but the point that I want to make is that, we tend to think that absolute love seems to mean that there is no right and wrong, there is no good and bad, there is no preferences. This is all bullshit. There definitely is morality. And there definitely is, it's not, I wouldn't say morality is about, it includes respecting people's consent. But I also think morality it contains two factors, additional factors to that. I like that, right? Morality is about honoring people's consent. But then that kind of breaks down too when you look at how we treat animals or you look at how we treat the environment or even how we treat ourselves. Because ethics is not only about how we treat others, it's how we treat ourselves and how groups treat other groups and how groups treat individuals. Ethics is a lot broader than just morality. Morality is really just a subset of ethics, how we should treat others, other people generally. So, one kind of final point that I want to make here is don't argue with someone who has to be right. Who has to be right. Because their job is to be right. Don't argue with the priest, right? You're not going to win. You're not going to win. Don't argue with the priest. Don't try to do philosophy with somebody who has to be right. Maybe there's a reason why Socrates was killed, right? Socrates is trying to debate people who have to be right. Don't do that. Leave these people alone. You don't have to demonize them. You don't have to talk shit about them. You don't have to hurt them. But don't try to convince, right, somebody who has to be right that they're wrong. Right? That's just common sense, kind of wisdom. But, the thing is that you will do that and you won't make a lot of friends doing that. And so this is what absolute love is actually all about, is that you want to temper being someone who has to be right. You might call this humility. You might call this loose openness. You might call this friendliness, friendship. That's, I think, an aspect of morality or ethics, is to be less defensive and less guarded and to kind of lead with that aspect of, let's see if we can relate together, at least superficially first before we, point fingers at each other and go, you're bad, right? Okay, friends, so hopefully what I've tried to do in this video is just give some nuts and bolts to absolute love and the relation between morality and absolute love. And I just want to leave it on this. Again, absolute love does not mean that you have to get along with everybody. I think ultimately what absolute love is once you have absolute truth, which is a spiritual grounding where you're no longer feeling threatened by other spiritual systems or other finite perspectives that have spiritual points of view that differ from your own, then you can find a meta way of relating with other people if they consent to it. Right? You're not going to do this with a crocodile or with a lion that wants to eat you, right? And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but I'm just saying that people have different tolerances for how open they are in any given moment in time. Then you can relate with a lot more beings and a lot more things. On the other hand, you don't want to be stupid about this, right? You do want to have some boundaries. You do want to have a lock on your front door in your house, right? I mean, unless you live in a really small town or you live out in the woods somewhere, you definitely want to lock your door at night. So the second half of morality is defensiveness. So, but ultimately, it's only an individual who's going to be able to balance this. And then I would say the third thing is don't force relation where it's not natural. In other words, you can be controlling with relation just like you can be controlling with truth. Like, you have to agree with me or we have to agree with each other. There's going to be some people that just aren't going to want to do that, right? It's like a cat that's not social. You can't make that cat social. Like, you walk in the house, the cat runs away, right? It just doesn't want to be social. To try to force that cat to be social in a way would be wrong. You want to leave it alone. So one of the aspects of morality too is knowing when to leave someone alone, right? That's almost the most moral thing you can do, is leave them alone. Okay, friends? Hopefully this is a good video. I'll talk to you soon.